Which two-star pitchers are we looking to use in Week 24? Find out next on Fantasy Baseball Today in 5. Welcome into FBT in 5 on Friday, September 1st. Happy September. We finally made it. I am Frank Stanfield, joined by Scott White, and let's preview Week 24. The schedule for next week, 6 teams with 7 games. That includes the D-backs, Cubs, Guardians, Angels, Mariners, and Rays. 22 teams with 6 games, and 2 unlucky teams with 5 games, the New York Mets and the Washington Nationals. Starter sit these fringy 2-star pitchers for next week. Bryce Miller at the Reds and at Tampa Bay.
So I think it's going to be hard to sit Bryce Miller. The matchups are pretty scary. Fly ball pitcher at Cincinnati. And he doesn't often go deep into games, but the overall numbers are strong. And I think you keep him around mainly for the 2-star weeks. I think you probably have to use him.
Hunter Greene, both of his starts coming in Great American Ballpark against the Mariners and Cardinals.
Yeah, the matchups are a little better here for Greene. What's scary with him is his first 2 starts off the IL were just horrendous, and you worry about that happening again. He did a rebound in the 3rd start, so he's coming off a good one, hopefully back on track, sort of like with Bryce Miller. If you can't start him now, I'm not sure when you will.
Reed Detmers versus the Orioles and the Guardians.
Nope.
And Brandon Pfaadt against the Rockies and at the Cubs.
Heck no. I do want to mention a couple real quick. Jose Berrios has been shaky recently, but at Oakland versus the Royals, 2 great matchups. Cole Ragans, from our perspective, he's way too good to bring up now. He's just must start. In fact, he's 3rd overall in my 2-star pitcher rankings for this week, going against the White Sox and the Blue Jays. But he is still widely available on other platforms. So if he's somehow out there in your league, you got to pick up Ragans and probably never sit him again.
All right. If you miss out on those names, who are some 2-star pitchers to add and stream for next week?
So Gavin Williams, I like for this week, with a caveat. He left his last start, took a tumble, left with a knee injury. We haven't heard much since. It didn't seem serious. Hopefully we hear something over the weekend and he actually does appear Monday. He would be facing a Twins lineup that strikes out a ton, and then later in the week he'd be facing the Angels, who aren't nearly as good as they used to be. Kyle Hendricks, I like a lot for this week as well, going against the Giants, going against the Diamondbacks. He's just been a quality start machine. Looks a lot like the Hendricks we remember from a few years ago, who you're never blown away by any individual start, but just so reliable, ends up with great numbers. JP France at Texas versus San Diego. Matchups could be better, but he's been so reliable. It's hard to sit him when he's making 2 starts. Brian Wu at Cincinnati, at Tampa Bay. Same scary matchups that Bryce Miller has, but he's looked great since coming back from the IL and has good underlying numbers. Real deep play here is Darius Vines. Had a great debut for the Braves in Colorado. Showed just a really smart approach to pitching and has a great changeup. It worked against the Rockies there. Will it work against the Cardinals and Pirates this week? Hopefully. It's obviously a bit of a risk, but he's only 8% rostered. And then finally, Andrew Heaney against the Astros, against the Athletics. I actually think he's over rostered at 71%, but when he's making 2 starts and one is against the Athletics, it's hard to say sit Andrew Heaney.
Yep. The single start streamers for next week, we've got Kyle Harrison against the Rockies, Jose Quintana at the Nationals, Jordan Wicks versus the Giants, and Ranger Suarez at home against the Marlins. Let's talk hitters and the best matchups for next week. The D-backs, Braves, Blue Jays, White Sox, and Yankees. The worst hitter matchups, Marlins, Pirates, Astros, Cardinals, and the Rockies. With that being said, your 10 sleeper hitters for next week.
Davis Schneider is number 1 on the list, getting everyday at-bats with Matt Chapman sidelined and just hitting out of his mind. You mentioned the Blue Jays have the 3rd best hitter matchups at Oakland for 3 versus Kansas City for 3. I have Adam Duvall on here just because he's a hot hand play. Royce Lewis, same thing. Mitch Garver's a hot hand play, but I like him even more this week because the Rangers are facing left-handers in 3 of their 6 games. He's always been a lefty killer, including this year. His teammate Ezekiel Duran is pretty good against lefties himself. He's been cold recently, but he's still playing third base every day. Might come around with all the lefties on the schedule this week. Another lefty killer, longtime lefty killer, Wilmer Flores of the Giants. And he has 4 lefties on the schedule, so a good time to use him. JP Crawford's kind of a righty killer, actually. He's been hot. Mariners shortstop. I think his OPS, going off memory here, I think it's around 850, maybe even over 850 against righties, excuse me. And that's all the Mariners are scheduled to face in their 7 games. So good time to use JP Crawford. You mentioned the Diamondbacks have the best hitter matchups from their lineup among those available. Gabriel Moreno, their catcher's been hot. Geraldo Perdomo, their shortstop, hasn't exactly been hot. But I think with these matchups, you could look into using him.
All right. For more extensive fantasy baseball coverage, listen to the Fantasy Baseball Today podcast on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, the Audacy app, or anywhere else podcasts are found. Thanks for listening to Fantasy Baseball Today in 5, and we'll be back again tomorrow. Bye-bye.